services that do it ourselves, and definitely we're entering into entertainment space and very large area is the payment space. But the larger portion, which we believe we're going to be participating in the ecosystem, is collaboration. We're opening up our APIs for the whole ecosystem to participate. We're opening up our payment systems for this. So there is for us, we're going to monetize not only what we're going to do in digital space, but all the assets that telecom sector has built over the years.
Interesting point indeed, that you're looking to monetize assets that you've built over the years. The other part of this debate is that are people free riding on the highways that you've built? I'll come to that in just a bit. But Mr. Sood, let me ask you, do you also believe convergence today, I mean, forget about connectivity right now, but convergence, the coming together of ecosystems is no longer a choice, it's a business imperative. If you're not going to offer it, maybe he will or idea will. So it's something that's so core and crucial to business today.
I completely agree with what Himanshu has said, and as a company, we have taken that step long time back to move towards convergence. Globally, we already the market leaders in products like IoT, in the automotive sector. We went and bought various companies, including a large Italian company to run our automotive IoT business. And even in India, these are the sectors we're looking at for further expansion. And we're focusing on some, if you went to our stall in the exhibition, you would have seen a tractor there. The tractor has a live IoT device inside it, and that's what we have done in partnership with Escorts. If you go and see a JCB anywhere in India, that has one of our IoT devices already built into it. So this is a reality, and this is an area where we've been investing sometime in the past. Some of it is now fructifying in terms of market development. Today, in fact, with Videocon, we launched consumer IoT products, which are security cameras, in the afternoon today. So this is the area where we're all focusing on. And definitely, I mean, I'm just giving one example of convergence. He's given digital as an example of convergence. He's given other assets which we have, which is our whole database, the whole publishing ability that telecom has, as well as the assets of financial services which we could participate in. Because look at the advantages we have. We are one of the companies which goes the deepest as well. We are in the big cities, we are in the rural belt. We connect both sides. We are across the expanse of India. We are across India and what we call Bharat. Okay, we exist on both sides.
Right.
And that's what our power is. And how can we monetize that in the future is also one of the angles that we are looking at.
I'll come to monetization in just a minute, because that in itself is also a big debate. But let me ask you, you perhaps the newest entrant, and one would believe that you see convergence much like what it is today. Convergence for them perhaps is a beast that has evolved over the years. You are a new entrant. Has convergence still taken you by surprise, the amount of convergence there is?
In our case, I don't think convergence was an accident. It was a planned event. In other words, we started with convergence because everything was data-centric, so convergence is very natural. And when we look at convergence, we look at convergence at the home, whether it is, when you look at a gateway, whether it's connectivity, IoT hub, security, multimedia, it's all at the home gateway. So it's at your home, in your hand, and at the enterprise. So it's a convergence is natural to us. So it is not just about content and multimedia, but is a day-to-day activity, but it's also a business and service model associated with it.
Fair point indeed. I'll just take one more round of questions with the daddies of telecom and then open it to everybody else. Mr. Kapadia, telecom as an industry has sunk in about 9.2 lakh crore rupees in infrastructure investments alone. You are the second biggest infra investor in this country. How different is the next round of investment going to be owing to this convergence? Because you're not doing this alone now. You know, Flipkart is riding on you, or you know, other e-com players are riding on you. So I'm just trying to understand, when we talk about a convergence of this kind, from home to your device to wherever you work, and other entities being a part, how different will the nature of the next round of investment be? And 9.2 lakh crore is a lot of money.
So let me first make an important point from a financial stress and you're absolutely right that the industry spent 9.2 lakh crores. This is not assets that belong to some private sector or some company. These are national assets, and should be seen in the same light as you will see roads, rails, and other large assets that get built. Definitely, the sector is not going to stay at 9.2 lakhs and only connect to 1.2 billion for its voice needs. It is going to provide nationwide probably world's largest or second largest broadband services. So telecom sector is going to invest, as Akhil put it, somewhere in the order of, my reading is anywhere in the order of 5 to 6 lakh crores over the next 3 to 4 years for able to provide choice to customers and on a nationwide basis broadband services on 4G and maybe later on 5G networks.
You know, before I go to Mr. Sood on how will the model change, Binny, let me ask you. You're one of those entities that rides on these highways. And you know, when we talk about convergence, I have people like you in mind. When he says that have the same rules for, and you know, telecom as a sector also is in the business of content. They're bidding for IPL. So, you know, the lines are blurring between telcos and between providers like yourselves. When he says that I'm happy with others riding, but there has to be a back-end integration, I'm going to take this up with Relgio and Vodafone as well. But from your point of view, when you're riding on a highway like that, what sort of monetization should they be looking at? I mean, what sort of a convergence can then come in? Because a lot of people, the misconception is that you're a free rider, which is farthest from the truth. But I'll put you on a spot and let you do your defense.
What sort of monetization for us or for the...
For the telcos and for you, what sort of a mutual relationship can this be?
I think we have to, I think from our perspective, our core business is really e-commerce, right? And it does ride on, obviously, connectivity, but it does also ride on a few other things, which is technology and which is also supply chain. I think there is, from a monetization standpoint, I think there's obviously all the telcos, all the operators have large customer base. E-commerce customer base is not as large as the telcos have, so there are clearly collaboration opportunities with players like us to really get on that customer base and improve that. And I think there is also collaboration opportunities definitely on, not maybe on the core e-commerce areas, but on the fringes, let's say financial services or content, which again will become important for us going forward. But in the core business, I don't see, apart from the customer, collaborating on growing the customer base, I don't see a lot of opportunities.
I'll put you in a spot when I'll come to you and ask you if a telecom can become a Flipkart. I'll ask you that question. I promised the audience there. But Nuzi, if I may ask you, you know, in the morning earlier today, Mr. Ambani and Mr. Mittal made this war cry on how there needs to be collaboration, how there needs to be a back end that comes together and you can all compete on front end. We saw perhaps the beginnings of that when outsourcing of network began. I mean, that I thought was the first parcel of that happening. 3 years down the line, do we see the entire back end being one? Spectrum being owned by everybody together, the entire back end being one, and people collaborating and competing only on brand and maybe customer experience. Is that going to be a reality in a market? Is the market driving itself to that sort of a reality?
Yeah, thank you for these very easy questions. No, but first of all, I would also like to thank you and E and Y for inviting me. It's an honor for me to be here in India this day. No, I think when it comes to fixed network, that is happening in some places, like in Australia, is kind of starting to happen in Italy. We have seen that in UK as well. When it comes to mobile network, at least what I have seen around the world, there has been piece of that, but mainly in the rural area where operators decide to go for network sharing. But I have not seen yet, I think, any place where we are kind of close to go for that kind of model. And it's, I believe, complicated because, I mean, we are, at least if you see India now, in India everything is big. I mean, the speed that you have today is really enormous. If you look at the volumes, everything that is happening in India, it might be happening in other places, but it is 10, 20 times bigger, and operators, they are competing, I mean, for their customer base. So unless there is a plan from, I don't know, government or the digital India will drive for that. I mean, I think it is in a pragmatic way very difficult that it can happen short term.
So regulations set aside, Karan, are you going to see operators drive this change? I mean, there's a reason why Mr. Mittal and Mukesh Ambani choose to speak about this from a platform like the India Mobile Congress, right? I mean, they're not speaking about this in private conversations with journalists or with policymakers. They're making a war cry from a stage as big as this. Do you believe it's going to be companies that are going to drive this coming together?
Absolutely. My view is that the regulation is going to stay. There are things that you can control, things you cannot control. there will be obviously efforts because of the large amount of spend that happens on things like spectrum. But I believe there is still the other part of the story, which is what you control and how you can drive the differentiation. And that is the one big opportunity. This morning, I spoke about two extremities of the vision that telecom could land in.
Right.
One is where you are really empowering $1 billion and $1 trillion economy, and the second is where you turn yourself into an absolute utility. Where you land totally depends on what you do now. And my view is the big opportunity for telecom companies is to transform from being product companies, voice, video, data products, to being platform companies. And that's the big differentiation. With due respect to all OTTs, my view is OTT happened because telecom did not make it happen. And that's the incumbent's disadvantage, I would say. There is no technological barrier for a telco to have been an OTT. So I guess the decisions that telecom companies take today in terms of being the platform for tomorrow, and I believe that there will be three or four big things that are going to drive the platforms for tomorrow.
Right.
Cloud, data, artificial intelligence. The companies that control these three architectures are going to control the customers of tomorrow. That's my view. So in my view, back to your question, absolutely it is in the hands of the companies on the decisions they take.
There isn't enough collaboration that has happened, and the 9.2 lakh crore that I thought was sunk in, you've got enough returns and more. But I thought there were no free lunches, right? They wanted their returns, which is why they put it. But I'll let you defend your position.
So you're making multiple points. First and foremost, 9.2 lakh crores definitely not sunk in if the regulation doesn't force to be sunk in. Because the 1.2 billion people as of today want voice. And irrespective of the media hype, Indians definitely want voice as an application. Voice as an application is not dying. And if voice as an application is not dying, let the best technology be in the hands of the customer, not in the hands of the regulator. So let consumer decide, not regulator decide what is best for it. And let that battle be in the marketplace, not in the media or by some stroke of pen to decide. So this is a risk-based approach. So there is no question about write-off of 9.2 lakh, but it is not that somebody wants somebody else to move to other technology. I think that's not fair. So having said that, you're also making two extremely important points. One is, can we have one network in India so that there is somebody does back end and somebody does front end? I don't think that's a pipe dream. We definitely need to have collaborations at ends which are not value adding. But wherever I have value adding, wherever consumer experience is involved, I would not like to give it to BharatNet, for example. Sorry, I would like to own it myself and with no, because I am responsible for consumer experience, because end of the day, if I expect value out of him, then I should be able to deliver it to him. That's why there are elements of the network which needs to be controlled by the brand which is wanting to sell to it. Otherwise, MVNOs are not what makes countries move to a large extent. They're coming to the third extremely important point. Why did we lose to OTT? Yes, we were sleeping. Okay, are we going to continue to be able to lose to OTT or future business models? I think time has come that telecom sector worldwide and telecom sector in India have to compete aggressively. What are the new models that are building? That's why, this is why today we are all gathered today. Today we are, cellular industry is today talking about IoT, M2M. These are the business which is in the process of evolving, and the cellular sector has taken on itself to compete. There are going to be technology partners who are going to provide us technology, and they could also own the customers. And I believe the telecom sector now at this time has to compete aggressively. Otherwise, it should not be that only OTT is there and we are not competing. I agree with Matthews that if a Facebook is a preference choice of the customer, we have to give them a great connectivity and great experience. But why can't India have its own Facebook is a question as equally important that we are asking.
You know, but I'll just take a point from what you said. Technology of the future has to be decided by the market and the preference of the customer. It can neither be decided by regulation, nor can it be decided by a stroke of a pen, quote unquote. How do you respond to that?
See, regulatory, industry, policy, technology, all of these have to gel in and work together. I couldn't agree more with, in terms of Himanshu's perspective, in terms of the approach that operators should do. But at technology, our job as an operator is to collaborate together to make sure that we are offering the most advanced technology at the most advanced features and capabilities so that both the industry and customers can leverage from it. So I'm not sure if it is something that the regulatory has a equation or an answer for it. I think it's a collaborative effort. And I sincerely believe the regulatory and the telecom ministry and the framework we have today has given us enough cushion, but there is more to do. He talked about same service, same rules, which is very important. And why is that important? Because let's take as an example, if there is a communications provider, right? If it's a communications provider, shouldn't the communications, we have to compete with every OTT. There is no question, and we have to deliver. But if it's a communications provider, don't we also have to look at the security of the nation? Don't we also have to look at saying that a communications provider, third-party communications provider can have anyone, be it a terrorist, be it an unlawful individual, can make a communication on this network, but it can only be monitored if you go through a lawful licensed operator. In my opinion, it should be uniform as that part of an example.
That does settle the debate as far as OTT versus telecom is concerned. Of course, plenty that has been said and unsaid between regulations, regulatory cushions, quote unquote, or not. But Mr. Srivasan, let me come to you. You know, we've been talking all evening, at least so far, on new revenue models, new monetization models. What sort of new revenue streams are available to telecom operators today? I mean, BSNL perhaps is the big daddy, you're present in parts of the country where none of these guys still are. But even then, what sort of revenue models or revenue streams that you believe are open to telecom operators available for them today?
A lot. In fact, we all talk about 3 C's here, and I think these 3 C's have emerged from 1 C, which is competition. And competition has only brought these three C's here. I believe that the connect part, which probably we have not given much emphasis on.
That's right.
India is not only city areas and tier 2 and tier 3 cities. India is much more bigger than that. It lives in the rural areas as well. And probably we have not done enough to connect those rural areas. So as you said, that new monetization model or new revenue stream resides in the rural part of the country. And this is our experience, that in the city areas and the more commercial areas, the competition is very tough. Everybody is competing for the one common pie. But if you go to the rural areas, that's where the money is. And people fail to understand this aspect, that the connect part is equally important. And as you go deeper to the pockets of country, the monetization will come.
Indeed. Binny, I'm going to ask you this question. You know, now that we are moving to higher technologies, the 4G, or even for the matter of 3G, you know, you did something like Myntra did, which is mobile only 3 years back. That experiment didn't really take off, so to say, and I think connectivity was a big criteria there. Do you believe the experience would be different if you were to do it today, owing to connectivity and convergence both?
Yeah, so I think 3 years back, the market dynamics were very different, right? So 3 years back, 20% of orders were getting placed through the mobile channel on e-commerce, and especially on Flipkart. And what we clearly saw at that time was the future, that in 3-4 years, that is going to shift, that 20% of the orders are going to be placed on the desktop, and 80% of the orders are going to move towards mobile. And I wouldn't agree with your first statement that it didn't really work, because that is actually what has happened. So now today, 80% of orders are anyway placed on the mobile. So if you look at the technology team at Flipkart, actually 95% of the team works on the mobile, and develops for the mobile, and only 5% of the team develops for desktop. So I think that transformation actually has already happened, and not just in Flipkart, but also I think in all internet companies as well. Yeah.
But how long before you actually decide to go mobile only?
I don't think mobile only is a question for Flipkart. So for an e-commerce company, you have to be everywhere where the customer is. So we would want to be present on each and every screen, on each and every device which the customer has, whether it's a mobile, whether it's a new AR, whether it's VR, whatever new technologies come, whether it's your smartwatch, we'll need to be anywhere and everywhere.
You know, you spoke about the consumers in the hinterland and the rural areas. Mr. Sunil, if I may ask you this question. A lot of people in rural areas, I mean, anecdotally speaking, of course, and I'm sure there's data to support that, are still using their data for Facebook or for WhatsApp. This question is really for both, you know, all three of you actually on the other side of this line. Let's begin with you. How do you best get the biggest buck out of the customer there? Because I'm sure, you know, there's something that worries Binny, that the data is really being used for WhatsApp and Facebook and not so much to perhaps purchase online still. But from your point of view, because you're competing with them, you're competing with OTTs, and you have to offer the pure bread and butter telecom services.
Yeah. First of all, I want to correct some of your impressions that we are not there in the rural belts, that we haven't invested in the rural belts. We have more than 60% of our customers in the rural belt. So let's not get into that area. But coming back to, see, what are the OTT apps they use for which is most popular? I mean, that's a game which the customer chooses. Now, he's using WhatsApp because a customer nowadays is using messaging and photographs. And one of the easiest OTT apps to enable messaging and sending photographs to their families and to their friends is WhatsApp. And that's one of the popular reasons of the villager, using this medium or this OTT in a popular way. So, but that's not what our issue is. We are quite happy with him using WhatsApp. It helps our business. It grows the number of data customers I have. And you know, I don't care which one he starts with. I want to encourage him and I want to educate him how to use the OTT and how we can gain from what's on the internet. So the question is a little different. In the village, the guys ask us, if I have to spend 10 rupees on data, what's in it for me? What do I get if I spend 10 rupees on data? I know what I get when I'm spending it on voice. I connect to all my family. I connect to my business. I improve my business. I get information. Now, what do I get if I have to spend 10 rupees on data? What's my return? Okay, and that's the answer that we need to educate our customers within the village, in the villages, and that's what we are trying to do, and that's the big task that we are trying to do in terms of telling him what's in it for him. Now, one of the big advantages we had is when these guys had the billion sales, etc., is we say you get cheaper goods. You know, you connect to take data and you get cheaper goods thanks to the e-commerce players, and that is a very positive driver of the people in the villages taking data connectivity.
Right now. So I think, but you know, Binny, if I may ask you, he's right. I mean, how does he care what the data is being used for? Because he's going to get his 10 rupees for the data package. What about you? How do you get the best buck out of the data package?
I think for us, it depends on two things, right? One is the speed of connectivity, whether it's 2G or 4G. What we see is that the use of e-commerce goes more and more as we move to faster speeds. So what we have seen in the last 18 months is 80% of our growth coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities versus the metros and the tier 1 cities. So as we roll out our supply chain in those areas, we see that customers are willing to buy as long as we are available as a service there. Our supply chain is available and there is a good enough data speed for them to buy online. So I think as the speeds, as the 3G and the 4G networks catch on in these areas, and as we build our own infrastructure, supply chain infrastructure in these areas, I think we'll continue to sort of monetize with more sales.